You are live.
I'd like to call the Monday, August 15th, 2022 Westfield, Washington Township Advisory Plan Commission to order. Pam, would you call the roll and notice the presence of a quorum, please?
Ms. Berkman?
Here.
Mr. Deck?
Here.
Mr. Horkay? Mr. Johns?
Here.
Dr. Kelleher?
Here.
Mr. Maui? Mr. McCarty?
Here.
Mr. Schmitz?
Here.
Ms. Boljaric?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is the approval from the minutes of August 1st, 2022. Do I have any additions, corrections? Or I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from August 1st, 2022.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Deck and seconded by Ms. Berkman to approve the August 1st, 2022 minutes as written. Would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Berkman?
Yes.
Mr. Deck?
Yes.
Mr. Johns?
Yes.
Dr. Kelleher?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Ms. Boljaric?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next item on the agenda is the review of rules and procedures. Please, Pam?
For tonight's meeting, we have both public hearing and non-public hearing items. For a public hearing item, the meeting will have the following structure. The department will summarize the petition, then the petitioner will be given up to 15 minutes to present to the Plan Commission. The president will open a public hearing. Individuals will be given 3 minutes to speak. Those representing a group will be given 5 minutes to speak. Only one member of each group will be given 5 minutes to speak, and for efficiency purposes, we ask those representing a group please come up to speak first. The public hearing will be closed when all interested members of the audience have had a chance to be heard and all emails received during the meeting have been provided to Plan Commission members. The petitioner will then have a chance to respond to comments. The Plan Commission will follow with any comments, questions, or concern and action if required. For non-public hearing items this evening, the department will summarize the petition and highlight any changes or modifications since the item was last before the Plan Commission. The department will also summarize what action, if any, is necessary to be taken. The petitioner will be given up to 15 minutes to present changes, and the Plan Commission will act upon the petition. For general rules of conduct, we ask that you please not disrupt the proceedings in any way. If you need to have a private discussion, we ask that you please quietly exit the room. Please silence your devices at this time, and again, if you must answer them, please quietly exit the room. If you are attending in person and wish to speak in regard to a petition scheduled for a public hearing, we ask that you form a line along this back wall when the public hearing is open and sign in on the sign-in sheet as you approach the podium to speak. Again, if you are representing a group, we ask that you please come up to speak first. During your comments, please state your name and address into the microphone for the record, and we ask that you please not repeat previously stated comments. Your presentation will be timed, and you will be advised when there is approximately 30 seconds remaining. If you are not attending in person and wish to comment on a petition, you can email planners@westfield.in.gov with the petition name or number included in the subject line. Those comments will be forwarded to Plan Commission members and the petitioner. We would also like to remind everyone to please speak directly into the microphone so your comments can be put onto the record. Please mute your microphone when not speaking. And if you do come up to the podium to speak, please ensure the microphone is on as indicated by the green light. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. First item on the agenda is consent agenda items. We have 2201-DDP-03 Union Square. Does any Plan Commission member have any questions or comments before we vote on this?
I'll just say that this has been a long time coming, and I'm glad to see this concept art come forward and really happy to see this coming along. So with that, if I may, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I have a motion by Mr. McCarty. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second, by Mr. Johns. Would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Berkman?
Yes.
Mr. Deck?
Yes.
Mr. Johns?
Yes.
Dr. Kelleher?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Ms. Boljaric?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next item on the agenda, under items of business, is 2203-DDP-04 PUD-05, the Towns at Union PUD.
Good evening, members of the commission. For the record, Caleb Ernest with the Community Development Department. This request is for the change of zoning of 12.85 acres from the AGSF1 district to the Towns at Union PUD district. The property is located generally east and adjacent to Union Street and south of David Brown Drive. This item received its public hearing at the March 7th Plan Commission meeting. Since that meeting, the petitioner submitted revisions, as well as appeared at the July 18th Plan Commission meeting for discussion on the project. Since that meeting, the July 18th meeting, the petitioner has made revisions as outlined in the staff report and as described here soon by the representative. In short, the following sections have been revised: dwelling design, landscaping standards, vision clearance, parking and loading, infrastructure, design, and maintenance standards, as well as the majority of the exhibits in the ordinance. John Dabashewitz of Nelson and Frankenberger, representing the project, is here tonight. He plans on making a presentation. He's available for questions, and so am I if you have any questions for staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. For the record, John Dabashewitz with Nelson and Frankenberger. We represent the applicant, Pulte Homes. Rex Ramage with Pulte and Jim Schinover with our team are available this evening to address any questions. As staff indicated, we had the public hearing for this matter back in March and then came back to you in July with revisions. We were asked for a couple of additional items in July, which we've added to the ordinance, as well as a request to sit down with staff and hammer out a lot of standards with regard to infrastructure and design standards, which we have done. The one item in particular, with regard to the site, this was the original plan. It called for 84 units, all 3-story buildings with one amenity area. The updated plan is reduced down to 73 units. All are 2-story dwellings. There are 3 amenity areas which are detailed in the ordinance. The boulevard entrance from Union Street, increased tree preservation, and with regard to the dwellings, Pulte does not today currently build a rear load or alley-fed 2-story product that'll be designed. The anticipated home values here between $400,000 and $450,000, and the one significant modification we made was to provide masonry on all 4 sides of the dwelling. In advance of the meeting, Ms. Buljarek asked 3 questions, 2 with regard to landscaping and the 3rd with regard to the Springwater development to the south. Within the Springwater development to the south, my understanding is that the front yard setback along Union Street is 0, but there has to be a minimum 8-foot area for landscaping. That may be due to the meandering of the path that's existing and proposed along that frontage. We don't know that, but that's the answer to the question with regard to Springwater, where this ordinance requires a minimum of 10-foot setback. The second, with regard to landscaping, the ordinance requires that each townhome unit on an end-capped or corner lot would have a tree in the required side yard, and we're going to adjust that language so that it says additional. So there's no question that that's an extra tree on top of the otherwise 1 tree required per dwelling. And then finally, there was a question about the tree preservation area, and our ordinance indicates that it shall be generally as illustrated on the concept plan, and we'll change the word generally to substantially. We will be back in front of the Plan Commission at a future date with a development plan, and then to the extent we did modify that, and we cut out one specific area, and you can see on the plan that one area is right here where we'll need to cut into that area, and we feel like modifying that now from generally as illustrated as substantially indicated on the plan. We'll come back with a development plan that clearly shows all those areas for tree preservation, and it defaulted to the UDO standards with regard to tree inventory and all the other provisions that would be applicable to tree preservation. So with that, glad to take any comments or questions that the Plan Commission has. Would respectfully request that this evening that the Plan Commission consider forwarding this item as amended verbally this evening to the council with a favor recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, John. go through the Plan Commission members to see if anyone has any questions or comments. I'll start at the end with Mr. Johns.
I would like to, again, thank the petitioner for reducing the number of units and for making them two-story, eliminating the three-story models. Also, impressed with the changes to increase the tree preservation area. One of my concerns had been the fence along the southern border, bordering the cemetery, and I see that that's been addressed in Exhibit E, so appreciate that. And I think you guys have made some good strides, and thank you.
Thank you.
Dave Schmitz?
Just same thing from Mike, just echo his appreciation. I appreciate the refinements made to your submittal. It was, looks like you clearly had addressed and clarified in your ordinance the things that were addressed last time, so thank you.
Ms. Boljaric?
Well, I asked John a few of these questions before the meeting for clarification, but there's one other thing. For the landscaping around the pond specifically, your ordinance exempts you, if I'm not mistaken. It says shall not apply around the wet perimeter. And in the comments, in your petitioner response to the comments, you actually did say that it says to the extent permitted after final engineering, that Pulte agrees to landscape around the edge of the pond.
There's two provisions there. One is landscaping, the other is with regard to wetland plantings that are actually in the water. We're not proposing to implement the supplemental landscape or wetland plantings along the perimeter, but landscaping around the pond is still in the plan.
And there is a chance that this could be dry and not wet, correct? No?
No chance.
Okay, because there's different language in the ordinance that says something about if, it could be dry or wet.
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear.
Do
that
we
we're-
want to remove that then, because it's going to be wet?
No, it wouldn't. It's not Pulte's intent to use wetland plantings along the perimeter of the pond. It is to landscape around the perimeter of the pond under another provision within the UDO.
John, do you know where it says that in the ordinance? I think that's what Cindy's questioning.
Give me 1 second.
Or maybe staff can find it too.
This one? what is that? 7.2D ponds, this is what we're talking about?
Yes.
Article 6.8 I2 of the UDO, wetlands, aquatic vegetation planted around wet perimeter shall not apply.
But they haven't exempted themselves from landscaping around the pond.
Correct, let me take a look at that UDO standard.
And it's actually, if you pull it up, staff, it's I, 1, II.
Okay,
I don't know if there was an update to the ordinance, but it's, if you jump into the UDO. The first section, it talks about the landscaping requirement, and then it talks about wetland plantings.
yeah, so the version of the UDO I have, it's I1, B, I would say, wetland aquatic vegetation planted around the wet perimeter of such areas should be utilized to further this design objective. However, if such plantings are utilized for water quality control, then landscape plans shall be prepared, stamped by a licensed architect. So that just removes the wetlands aquatic vegetation. A of that same section, the previous point, says that detention and retention areas shall be landscaped in a manner that replicates the natural form of ponds and shall include shade trees, ornamental trees, evergreens, shrubs, hedges, and other plantings.
And they're not exempting
They're not
themselves
exempting
from
that portion, just the kind of wetland portion.
I think so. I mean, we have what they plan to do with their landscaping, which is, kind of far from the water, obviously, and I don't know the treatment that they're planning to do up to.
And again, that's the concept plan, and when we come back with development plan approval, it doesn't show that level of detail down to all the standards that are reviewed by staff for development plan.
This is an area that's, significant for water quality, impacting the area, so it's not something I take lightly. So if there is vegetation that would be important to protect that water quality, I would be interested to see it in there, I guess. Is there a reason you are exempting yourself specifically?
As Rex Ramage explains to me, that it's that the site hasn't been final engineered yet, to the extent that they need to provide it for, if it's used for water quality treatment, that where it's not required, there can be different methods of water quality treatment, it would meet that standard.
I'm still confused on how that would be administered at development plan, and, I mean, you're saying that it's not gonna apply, but that you might add it in if you can?
No,
That's what I'm confused about.
If the wetland water, aquatic plantings are used to satisfy our BMP for water quality treatment, it would have to meet that standard. We're not exempting ourselves from the standard if it's employed. We're proposing that we wouldn't use that as an alternate method for landscaping. So we're gonna landscape around the ponds pursuant to the ordinance. The ordinance says that wetland and aquatic plantings shall be used to supplement that. We're not proposing to supplement it, nor are we proposing at this time to use it for water quality. In the event that they do those plantings for water quality purposes, it still has standards that not only the UDO requires, but also the city has development design standards through engineering that would have to be met, because it's in essence part of their stormwater system.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Deck?
Just thanks to the petitioner for being flexible and making this work. And John, once again, I think you've done a great job in representing your client. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. McCarty?
I just share the positive sentiments of all my fellow commissioners, and thank you for the positive changes. I think they were all well warranted, so thank you.
Ms. Bergman?
John, do you mind going over the front landscaping again on Union Street? You talked about it in your presentation, that you were talking about an additional tree. I'm sorry, I just didn't quite catch it. Or
So
additional trees.
all the homes would have this is the old
The one shade tree, I think, and 4 shrubs, maybe. Were you saying you were doing something in addition to that?
The question that Ms. Boljarek had was on the end caps, so like on a corner, this side here of a dwelling, the side here of the dwelling, these various sides along this street frontage, there'd be an additional tree planted along the side of the building
Okay,
as a foundation planting.
okay.
In the ordinance, it says that, but it doesn't say the word additional, so one could infer that one tree would meet the requirement for the dwelling, which it's not intended to, so that's why we would add the word additional, so that there'd be no question as it being a second tree on that, adjacent to that one dwelling.
Okay, thank you.
John, just 2 questions. You want us to send a recommendation tonight, and if we did such, you would want to add that we change the word to additional planting on what page, so that staff gets this in a motion if we choose to do that?
It's on page 7 of the ordinance. It's section 7F 7F3. It would read, each townhome on a corner lot shall have a minimum of 1 additional shade tree required between the side of the dwelling and the street.
Thank you.
That was one of the changes, and then the other was with regard to tree preservation. That's section 7.2B on page 6, tree preservation. Article 6.8E, tree preservation standards in the UDO shall apply. Trees shall be as substantially compliant with and preserved as shown on the concept plan as existing trees.
Okay. So those 2 changes are what you would be doing with going forward?
Yes, please.
Okay. Any other discussion? Or I am ready to entertain a motion.
We would also suggest then correcting this code reference right here. That should be I1B instead of I2. I2 is location of the pond.
Okay, So we have 3 additional conditions.
Does the motion have to reflect those specifically, in which case I'll defer to one of my colleagues?
I think it should address them. It should, yes. And maybe staff can word that for us since you have the sections.
I can restate it.
Yeah. That's fine. Want us to do it or John?
So it would be
Restate.
adding additional under,
It's a-
which section?
So section 7.2B,
Two.
changing the word generally to substantially. Updating the code reference in 7.2D. Or correcting the code reference, and we can handle that. And then in 7.2F3, adding the word additionally. Have a minimum of 1 additional shade tree.
Okay.
All right, I can handle it now. I'll make a motion to send a positive recommendation to the city council on 2203 PUD 05, subject to 3 changes, modifications. Section 7.2B of the ordinance of the PUD shall, the word generally should be changed to substantial. 7.2D will correct the code reference. 7.2F3, add the word additional, so it reads additional shade tree. 1 additional shade tree.
Second.
I have a motion by Dave Schmidt, seconded by Cindy Spaljarek, to send a positive recommendation to the council. Would you please take the roll?
Mr. Deck?
Yes.
Mr. Johns?
Yes.
Dr. Kelleher?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Ms. Spaljarek?
Yes.
Ms. Bergman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda requires a public hearing, and I think Pam stated fairly clearly that if you're here, stand up and state your name and address and speak into the microphone. If you wish to send an email, you send it to email to planners@westfield.in.gov. At the end of the public hearing here in the room, we should have given people at home enough time to email their questions or comments in. So I will open the public, I got to start off first of all with staff report.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Kelleher. Members of the Plan Commission, Pam Howard with the Community Development Department. Before you this evening for public hearing and potential recommendation, we have the proposed North Point 2 PUD district. This 180-acre site is located on the north side of State Road 38 between Anthony Road and Hinkle Road and is currently zoned AGSF1. It is northeast and adjacent to the existing North Point PUD. The proposed ordinance accommodates an expansion of the North Point Commercial Park and also includes 5 residential lots. A public hearing was held for this petition at the February 22nd Plan Commission meeting. Several changes have been made since that time, and due to these changes and the amount of time since the first hearing, a second hearing is being required tonight. This item would be eligible for your recommendation following the public hearing. We do have several public comments. The public comment exhibit is up to date as of 5 p.m. today. A couple additional comments were received after 5, which you should have seen in your email, and we will continue to monitor during the public hearing. So at this time, I do have Russell Brown here to present, and after which both he and I will be available for questions. Thank you.
Good evening. For the record, Russell Brown, an attorney with the law firm of Clark Quinn, Moses, Scott & Grahn, 320 North Meridian Street, Suite 1100 in Indianapolis. Also with me tonight is Chris Wilkes from Holiday Properties. And tonight, as Pam mentioned, we have the unusual step of a second public hearing for the North Point 2 proposal. As you'll remember, we were heard originally on this in February with a proposed expansion of the North Point Business Park. And at that hearing, we as a development team heard comments from you on the APC and those in attendance that we need to continue to work to find a balance between the many competing interests that are present with any potential development on these 180 acres, and specifically in development on north of State Road 38 generally. With that in mind, the development team has continued to, in my opinion, bid against themselves in a way, creating what is now the 5th generation of a site plan and an ordinance. And tonight, I'll focus my presentation on 3 things: walking through those changes, reiterating how the development team continues to believe that North Point 2 does pay reasonable regard to the 2007 comp plan when all of the aspects of the plan are considered together. And third, with the time that's remaining, combat some of the noise that continues to find its way into the public comments and remonstrance on this project. So this was the first slide. It shows a revision to the concept plan that was created as this part of the iteration to this ordinance. I forgot mine. The western boundary is where a bulk of our changes have occurred, focusing on a different concept in that area. We've tagged them in the ordinance as a conservation lot residential area. The goal here was contemplated to put like new uses against like existing uses. This proposal would have no more than 3 lots, here, here, and here, abutting the 7 residential lots, which are the only residential lots directly abutting the area covered by this PUD. These lots, according to the text, would be at least 3 acres in size and would have buffering to that existing AGSF 1 zoned parcels and would have elevation enhancements to those existing 7 lots. The second additional change on this site plan would be the increase of Area 1, which is this area here, which has restrictions related to building height, orientation of overhead doors, and or to property boundaries. Previously, that area, which was called Area 2 in the previous ordinance, was adjacent only to the western boundary. Here, I've provided some written details of some of the changes made in this version of the ordinance. So we would dispute the allegations included in some of the remonstrance that we have not changed anything before we came back before you this evening. I'll walk through very quickly, but essentially anything that's underlined on this ordinance is new or a modification to the text that's before you this evening. We have added all the residential components, which replaced all of the concepts regarding a publicly dedicated park. We have lot maximums, meaning by the number. We have minimum sizes of lots. We also have maximum lot coverage requirements in the ordinance, which require more open space than the conservation subdivision standards included in your comp plan. We have made some additional tweaks to Area 1, which I covered in the previous slide, but has increased the number of acreage. We've also placed prohibitions on outdoor storage in proximity to borders of the PUD. We have added buffering requirements between the business park and these new conservation lot residential area. And we've added buffering requirements between the conservation area, lot residential area and those 7 existing residential uses on the western boundary. We have maintained the previous design standards discussed in the last public hearing. And in this version of the ordinance, it is our view that we have not become more permissive on any design standard, restriction, or requirement than previous ordinances. I'm going to take a quick spin through our previous versions of the site plan to reiterate and show, I think, the evolution of this has gone over the last 2 years. We do this to show that in our perspective, we have worked to continue to find a balance of how this site interfaces with the 7 most affected property owners. Some have accused us in the remonstrance presentation of simply changing the color of the quote-unquote lipstick through this process. But I believe that we have and continue to work to and have a desire to find the balance that we were asked to find in February. These are the site plan changes only. They are not the changes to the text. So this was our neighborhood meeting, and Plan Version 1 showed a 50-foot buffer here, but showed the boundaries of the park throughout the park. That meeting was held approximately 2 years ago, August 13th of 2020. This is the second iteration, shows a greater buffer, 100 foot, shows a 10-foot high mound, increasing in physical buffering. That was presented to neighbors at the August 27th, 2020 neighborhood meeting. This is the third version, held in January of 2021, the first time we introduced a residential component to this development. Here you see a development similar to Coventry, which is adjacent to North Point 1. This was the proposal that was before you in February, showing approximately a 10-acre park and showing Area 1, or I'm sorry, then called Area 2, essentially contiguous only to those residential areas or the park. And here, I show the version 5. Talk briefly about buffering changes and size of those buffering changes. I think that's important to highlight. The current site plan more than doubles the setback of the boundaries to those 7 residential units. In the ordinance before you in February, it was approximately 360 feet. This is now at least 760 feet from lot line to edge of what we're calling conservation residential lot area. It also adds a mound on the business park boundary here. It also maintains the walking path dedicated easement, and also maintains the 100-foot building setback line. So lot line to nearest point of a building would be 860 feet. We do believe that this buffer, we have also added a buffer requirement between these two, so between our proposed residential development and existing residential development at the recommendation of staff. We think this is a meaningful modification, it's a meaningful change, and does provide meaningful changes to the western boundary. It guarantees that there are no existing residential uses which will buffer Area 1 or Area 2 of the proposed North Point 2. There'll be no point that those boundaries could exist. As you'll remember, those of you who were in attendance in February, significant time was discussed at the comp plan. The comp plan is the #1 issue, is contained, in my opinion, it's contained as a reason for remonstrance in virtually every piece of correspondence that you've received, and there have been many. Given this importance, I cannot feel comfortable walking out tonight not reiterating our rationale for why a review of the entirety of the comp plan, in our opinion, does not provide a slam dunk, open and shut case for denial that many may argue. The comp plan, as you know, is comprised of both maps and text. The map before you tonight is obviously very familiar to you. It's been in place for 15 years. You consider it in nearly every application before you. Here, there's lots of attention paid to use #1. We think uses 4 and 5 also deserve some consideration, and I'll re-explain why. Highway corridors. They're called out in the text. They're not shown on the map. Both the text and the map are important. The text here before you, which is the same that was before you in February, provides that, as you know, highway corridors have an impact on appearance, economic vitality, and convenience. This text goes on to limit where new residential development should occur, specifically calling out it should only be in village or downtown areas along corridors. There are no village corridors along State Road 38, none. Not at Anthony Road, and obviously none on your comp plan in the unincorporated Noblesville area east of Hinkle Road. By the text of your ordinance, of your comp plan, new residential development should therefore not front on State Road 38 in this area of the community. Second, in the comp plan, it discusses business parks, what they should be, where they should be located. There's bold language again added for emphasis. We believe that 150 acres, which is down from what we had before you in February because of the addition of those residential uses, allows for the creation of a campus-like scale. We believe it's ideal for a single user who wants to create their 60, 70, or 80 acre corporate campus on this site, something that is in very short supply, if not non-existent in your community. The buffering efforts of this development continue to move the business park uses further from residential development, with 7 adjacent residential users now further buffered. There is no direct access to purely residential areas. There's a hard stop we think is important through the dedicated easements on the boundaries. Finally, we'll review the rural residential areas. We're all aware of the lack of an update to this comp plan since 2007. If the comp plan was a teenager, it would have its learner's permit today. Remonstrators would argue that the reevaluation means that nothing has changed here, nor should anything change. We argue the opposite, that the lack of a reevaluation clearly lessens the hard and fast impact of this recommendation assigned by some. I pointed out in February, but have provided the text for you tonight, that we think it's important to compare the northeast area and the southwest area of the community and the text that accompanies the rural residential areas there. And this language pointed out here, it talks about that the southwest area is relatively unique, should be reviewed, there should be new growth or limited to new growth. There's no mention there of a reevaluation or plan updates or monitoring development patterns. That is markedly different from the text in the northeast section, which recognizes that this location along a state road is bound to have changes. This was written before the limited access of US 31, before the creation. We still had to stop at the bottom of the hill. We didn't have an overpass that went over State Road 38 on US 31. That's a huge change. That's a change that we believe should have, but did not, led to a change in the comp plan, and we believe that is an appropriate reason for you to consider the petition before you this evening. Finally, I'll provide this. It's updated slightly from what was before you again in February. We do think that there is an important economic consideration here. We presented to you a layout of 46 lots, residential lots. We provided takedown data that we thought showed it was going to be a pretty slow process. Timing aside, the fact that it doesn't comply with the conservation subdivision lot layout. If you took that, it's approximately $500,000 in new tax revenue. Here, with 130 net usable acres, that's down because of the reduction of this area for residential uses. We believe that you'd have approximately $5.25 million in new taxes, plus any residential development that occurs. We do think that's an important consideration as you move forward this evening. And finally, I'll take my last couple of minutes to dispel some myths and rumors that are included in many of the remonstrance emails or petitions. First, I'll just point out, as we've pointed out repeatedly, the applicants here have not bought this property, are not ramming it through and seeking forgiveness instead of permission. We have options on this property. That's the development pattern. That's how development generally works. Not always, but generally works. We have the option to purchase pending some usable or approvable development pattern that the developers want to move forward with. So they control their property and they're seeking their desired uses. We've seen it cited numerous times that there's 1,500 to 2,000 acres of available property. Maybe I'm not as good at doing the investigation as others might be. I can tell you, looking at the city's GIS system, zoning maps, reviewing some PUDs, I was able to find approximately 3 properties larger than 20 acres that had an EI or OI designation on them that have no development on them. There's undoubtedly greater than that in this community, but that are available for development today. I found 3 properties. Maybe others can point me to more, but that's what I was able to find. I'll close here. We do believe that the proposal before you tonight does pay reasonable regard to the emerging development pattern and growth pattern in your community. We believe that those are significant changes along State Road 38, including the commercial development that has occurred and is occurring since the 2007 comp plan. We believe that this rezoning would allow for the opportunity to establish a business park in conformance with your comp plan. We believe that compliance with the comp plan disfavors standalone residential development along highway corridors when you read all of the plan. And we believe that this does provide logical extension of North Point's success while filling a void in the Westfield, Washington Township planning jurisdiction, which is your obligation to look jurisdiction-wide. We'd be happy to answer questions that you have. Mr. Wilkes is available as well. Happy to hear concerns that are expressed during the public hearing, or deal with it however you would prefer us to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. We will open the public hearing now. It is 7:41. I guess I need to bang this. Anyone who wishes to speak, please line up and give Pam your information.
Yep. Is anyone representing a group here tonight? No. Okay. Yep. If you guys want to line up, whoever's going to speak first, go ahead and spell out your name, address, and check off representing self, and then we'll have you start signing in as you come up, please.
And for those people who might want to send in an email, the address is planners@westfield.in.gov. We will close the public hearing after everyone here has spoken, unless there are some emails received. Yes, planners@Westfield. Wait a minute, where is it? Planners@westfield.in.gov, G-O-V.
Yeah, and this is, the email is also on the agenda for anyone listening up near the top.
Hello to members of Westfield's APC, to Pam Howard, and everybody else. My name is Janet Quisenberry May. I own land at 20776 Anthony Road. And I want to thank you for your devotion to grow Westfield in a responsible way, pardon me, and to protect areas that are spelled out to be rural residential in the Westfield, Washington Township Comprehensive Plan. Our group submitted a remonstrance package to y'all early in 2022 with over 600 door-to-door and digital signatures opposing North Point 2 PUD, along with the map, which Russell mentioned, of commercial acreage available in Westfield. Our rural residential area is made up of animal farms, grain farms, families, houses with large acreage. And now we have 3 parks that make a triangle around this. These parks are providing badly needed green space, native plants, and preserving our wonderful wildlife out in that area. None of us wants an industrial park in this rural residential area. It does not fit in the midst of these parks and home sites and farms. It's just not a correct fit. We do not want the traffic. Already with the new intersection at 38 and Anthony Road, we're seeing semis coming from the north on Anthony Road through the new intersection. We do not want the pollution, the contamination, and the crime that follows industrial parks. I kindly ask you from my heart to please vote no on North Point 2 PUD. Protect the citizens that are there in this area and our beautiful parks and future generations. I thank you and God bless you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tim Armstrong, 20636 Anthony Road. I've sent emails before, I didn't resend again. I think you get the point from where I stand, and I just wrote down a few additional bullets here tonight. The first thing I wanted to speak on was regarding the new buildings for those lots, whatever they were called. So regardless of how far away the proposed industrial park would be, it's still going to be an eyesore. And what I'm going to refer to is this building that's gone up in North Point 1. I don't know the exact distance from my house, but I've looked at it from a satellite map. And even if you put this building as far east as you could at any industrial building, it would be about half the distance as this other one. And right now, it looks like they're going to land Boeing 747s, whatever. There's blinking lights. It's all lit up over there. It's an eyesore. I can't stand it. This would make it just incredibly worse. About half the distance, that's the best case scenario. The second point I wanted to make, in my opinion, Westfield doesn't owe the developer the chance to develop this land. Homeowners, as we've said before, did our due diligent research before determining where we wanted to live. Developers are taking a risk. They shouldn't just automatically get to rezone this land. And it goes back to a prior comment I made, which included developers should not drive the plan. Even though we can try to pick apart and pinpoint what parts are in bold and what may look like, pointing out mistakes of the plan, still, development should not drive this plan. The plan is set there for a purpose. So one of the most important things I can say to you, everybody in this meeting room will go home tonight after this session and move on. You folks will vote, go away. Developers will or will not get approved to do what they want to do. They'll move on in life. I don't. This right here, that's where I live. So I'm stuck with this decision. I ask that the committee consider one crucial point. That is, this is my home. I was at another rezoning meeting just kind of for support, and it was regarding the shooting range. And one thing upset me really bad. I was outside, and I heard someone say, I don't know who it was, so I'm not calling anybody out, but they were for the range, and I know there was some opposition, so they were saying to their peers outside, well, if they don't like it, they can sell their house. I'll buy it. Problem solved. I'm going to tell you, I've invested time and money in my property. I've acquired farm animals. I'm not in any position to just easily sell if I want to. I definitely don't want to live next to this, though. And even if I could, is that a message that Westfield wants to send? If we don't like it, then we should just move. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Christy Wheeler, and I'm blessed to live at 20889 Anthony Road. And I'd just like to start with a really quick update from last time by saying that the last time we were together, Mr. Brown stood here and told all of you that he would work with the citizens, and in particular me. He would reach out so that we didn't feel reactive, that we could come up with a balance and a creative option. 6 months have gone by since that statement, and we've not heard one thing. So that was just a quick update from last meeting. Comments have been made as to the relevance of a comp plan from 2007. Would it be ideal if comp plans were reevaluated every 5 to 10 years? Possibly. But the fact remains that the 2007 comp plan is the plan. It's the only plan that our community has in place. As a citizen, it's our only source of information. The fact that it's dated 2007 is irrelevant because it's still in place. No one has rescinded it. It hasn't been revoked. In fact, the plan has been updated with 7 addenda. The fact that these updates have been made to the plan would lead a reasonable person to conclude that the plan is very much a living document. And to the extent that certain sections of the plan have not been updated, the implication is that those sections are in fact still very valid. It's been mentioned that Westfield wants to be an area where all are welcome. Shouldn't those of us who have chosen to live a rural lifestyle and have purposefully chosen where to live that based on the guidance the city provides us be allowed to live that lifestyle? We're asking for nothing. No city water, no wastewater services, no exceptions, no incremental anything. Our only ask is that we be allowed to continue living a rural lifestyle in the area we were told that we could live it. Putting an industrial park into the NRR district, which is only approximately 1,300 acres to start with, would have the same effect as changing the entire district to commercial. It's just as simple as that. There's no way to buffer 60-foot tall buildings and the lights. There's just no way to hide that. It's so drastically different than everything that surrounds it. It would dominate the landscape and by doing so completely erase the ruralness of the district. You can't put a saber-toothed tiger into a petting zoo and think that the petting zoo will still maintain the same feel, character, and use. The very essence of it will be destroyed with the new addition. This isn't just a decision about 183 acres. It's a decision about an entire district and lifestyle. Thank you for your consideration and for your service to Westfield.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Wayne Pike, 5458 Sheridan Road. Just a few things. I knocked on every door down Anthony Road, 216th Street, Hinkle, and State Road 38. I've found not one person in favor of this. Also, when it comes a heavy rain, we have, and me and my neighbors have water standing. And I'm just wondering, when you have nothing but pavement for the water to hit, if the water's going to get worse on our properties, and who's going to take care of it if it does. I have a feeling it'll be us. There's a lot of noise that's going to be associated with this as much as anything else. I hear a lot of it now where I live on the corner of Anthony and State Road 38. When they put in the whatever connection they put in between the two roads, it's just about going to have a light there for the trucks to get in and out. So that will be, you go the length of two properties and you'll have two lights. It's be two lights within about a quarter of a mile. Traffic will be horrible along with the noise. And from what I saw, not much has changed what they did. It's just about the same thing they had to start with. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the APC. I'm James Hogan, and I live at 20275 Dayspring Court. It's in Hinkle Creek Estates, so we're actually in Noblesville Township. I'm here not necessarily representing the entire neighborhood that I'm in, although I think I speak for all of them, being vehemently against this entire thing. The way I look at it is, if you vote in favor of this, you might as well drop a bomb on the culture of that rural residential area. It would be devastating. I think a couple others have spoken about it. It would be devastating to that entire area. I think the last time I spoke about how this does not pay reasonable regard to any of the institutional of the Indiana Code. And I still believe that. And I'm not going to speak too much about that. But one thing I did hear, I think, in that last meeting was that there was a hard stop at 38. Hard stop at 38. Now I just hear tonight, there's a hard stop at that buffer. When is the hard stop going to cut even further into the core, going even further north. It's a legitimate concern for us. It's a legitimate concern, I'm sure, for a lot of people here. I don't want to see it. I'm very worried about it. The other thing that I wanted to mention is, so I own an environmental consulting firm, and one of the things that I've noticed just driving up and down Hinkle, there's some signs about the aquifer. It would be very irresponsible to put an industrial or commercial setting over a sole source aquifer, because the risk of any kind of contamination with chemicals, I deal with this all day long, millions of dollars in cleanup, millions, tens of millions. When it's a sole source aquifer, you're cleaning up to very low standards, and it's very expensive. It's a real risk, and it's a risk that I'm very concerned about because I have a well. My kids drink off that well. The entire Hinkle Creek Estates has a well. Contamination knows no boundaries. It's going to go in either whatever direction. It could go towards Anthony, Hinkle. It depends on which way the groundwater is flowing. It's a very legitimate concern for us. I remain steadfast in being against this. I think that there is a growing sentiment of being against this, and it's becoming more vocal. There's now a website that exists, and that website talks about the transparency that I don't think we're hearing from the people of North Point 2. Thank you.
Evening. Joseph Adams, 5059 East 211th Street. First thing I'd like to say is it's interesting that this map is very tightly drawn. If you were to expand it out just 2,600 feet on either side, you would see that there's a very different picture that emerges with all of the houses and families and residents. Hundreds of people have property just on the other side of Hinkle. And then just on the other side of these families is Morse Reservoir. And with that, regarding the North Point 2 zoning change, the main concern I have is the fact that there are too many questions on what kind of industrial park would be allowed to operate in North Point 2. We may end up with something that threatens the very air we breathe or the water we drink from the ground itself. The danger here cannot be overstated to the families that live within a mile of the proposed North Point 2 project. And since the North Point 2 project would drain into Morse Reservoir, the danger goes much farther and affects many more people in an industrial accident were to happen. To be clear, the threat of an accident can never be made zero. It's just a matter of time and a degree. And when you consider that Hamilton County is woefully short on parks and recreation, yet parks and recreation are cited by businesses and the public as a high priority when moving to a new location or staying in an existing location, the fact is most of the quality parkland left in Hamilton County is actually located very near the North Point 2 proposed site. North Point 2 proposed site would not only degrade the existing 3 parks that it's basically adjacent to, but it would also, with the light, the noise, the air, and the water pollution, North Point Park would become a constant threat to the quality of these existing parks and any other parks that might come to pass in the vicinity of Morse Reservoir. Then there's the guaranteed threat of an industrial accident or the slow water table decline due to water use or pollution. With North Point 2 located north of State Road 38, the residents of Hamilton County would be under constant threat of an industrial accident or just the fact that over time the pollution of the air, noise, light, and water would eventually change the character and quality of the land surrounding it, not to mention certain types of pollution would drain straight into the Morse Reservoir and threaten the water supply of many more residents of Hamilton County and even the surrounding counties. It goes, if North Point 2 goes forward, these the rarely seen animals, along much of which is now commonly found flora and fauna in this area, will be lost forever. And we do, what we do with this land is truly important to the availability of nature to our children and their children, and for these reasons, I implore you to vote no on North Point 2.
This next commenter had some exhibits that I just emailed you. It'll come through as a Genius scan from my email address, so it's a scanned in PDF. So we do have the paper copies, but there's one set if anyone can't access their email right now.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for hearing us again. I was here in February and spoke, and I don't have a ton to add tonight. I'll be brief, but I sent another email today with some thoughts and included my February email as well. Tonight, I just wanted to bring to your attention a property at 202nd Street, which is just to the bottom left of the map we have here. And it's a house that I showed a couple years ago when it was in total disarray. And my clients had no interest because of the surrounding commercial area all around it. The Gordon Foods was going in. And then when I looked at the maps at that time, we could see that North Point owned the land just to the east of them. And so they had no interest in it. Someone did buy it, and they put in some money. It's quite nice now. It has a nice pole barn, but it listed 90 days ago, and we're in a pretty hot market, as Mr. Deck knows. And the property sits there. They're dropping the price. It's not selling. And I just think it's just one example, but here it is, this house right next to a heavy commercial area, and it's not working, not selling. And then a couple other thoughts. One of my biggest complaints of this commercial development is going to be the traffic. It's already intensified with the stoplight there with semis, as she said, coming down Anthony Road, but it's just going to get worse and worse with commuters coming to these jobs. And it's dangerous. I mean, a lot of us live out there with kids, and there's cyclists who enjoy our road from who knows where, but they enjoy, there's walkers, joggers. It's just a nice area, and when you bring in this kind of industrial situation, it's going to change a bunch. And then one other thing, I know we're on the 5th version of this, as the gentleman said, and in that very first version, they only had a 50-foot buffer from those houses, from my neighbors, up against where they were going to develop. And that kind of tells me where their mindset was in the beginning of this, that it was about them. Yeah, they've made a lot of efforts to change it, and I don't know how much everyone else in the room feels that those make a difference to them, but it just shows me where they were from the beginning. Thanks.
Thank you. Can you state your name again, please? Some people didn't get it.
I'm sorry, Adam Corrier.
Thank you.
My name is Cliff Hackman, and my wife and I just built a home on 20828 Anthony Road. We are sitting pretty close to the proposed site. I'm speaking on behalf of my beautiful family and on behalf of my father-in-law, Keith Hunt, who owns the 185 acres directly north of the proposed site. On Tuesday, February 22nd, 2002, during the Advice Plan Commission, there were several comments made by the petitioner that stated the land in question could not sit dormant until the end of time. This was further supported by remarks that implied the land is not considered developed and or utilized without a building or structure on it. I would like to believe these comments were not meant to disparage or belittle the very backbone of our state. However, the very concept of North Point 2 would suggest otherwise. While the fields that sit next to the proposed land might appear to be stagnant, they've annually harvested corn and or soybeans for over 30 years. This agricultural land is not only active and productive, but is clearly serving the function that the Westfield Comprehensive Plan envisioned. So I have to ask myself, why would these comments be made? After reading Exhibit 10 public comments from the 222 meeting, it is not only my belief, but the overwhelming belief of many that the NRR farmland remains a precious asset that benefits all neighboring residents. This well-managed land protects soil fertility, water quality, and biodiversity. It also creates a beautiful, heartful setting for outdoor recreation and makes a durable contributions to the local economy. Most importantly, this land is irresistible. Once this natural area is turned into North Point 2, it can never be restored to its former condition. Land use has a much wider context of responsibility than the creation of economic growth. While the public meetings have highlighted economic growth, little communication has been made about the negative effects this would bring to the area. This includes air pollution, water pollution, soil degradation, and traffic congestion. The current proposed plan of North Point 2 does not prove that the benefits of economic growth will be worth the risk taken. It is a gamble that does not acknowledge the full cost of its implementation, nor have the support of its community members. To borrow an old farming term, it appears the developers at North Point 2 put the cart ahead of the horse by choosing land with a sole intent to have it rezoned without the support of its neighboring citizens. I do understand the comp plan is not a legal binding document, but I also understand it is the official policy of Westfield and agreed upon vision of the future in the community. It would be a misrepresentation of our great city, its people, and its rich history to allow a developer to domineer the decisions of how we use our land. There's a process to addressing rezoning changes, and this is clearly not it. I sincerely hope the city of Westfield, as well as the APC, recognize that economic development is not the unmindful, careless pursuit of luring businesses with tall structures. I instead hope they recognize the investment should be considered economic development unless they improve the quality of life of all nearby residents. To revisit the comment, we had to understand that land sitting dormant is unrealistic. I can assure you the land by the Hunts will not sit dormant, but will proudly continue to remain active and productive farmland. Thank you for letting me share my passionate thoughts, beliefs, and concerns, and I truly hope you don't see it as public noise. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Heather Summer, and I own the property with my husband at 21244 Anthony Road. The property was formerly part of the Bray family. We have a barn on the property dating back to the 1800s, so we feel like it has a rich heritage in the area as well. We purchased the property about 4 years ago in an attempt to be in Hamilton County, but also be able to see the stars, hear the natural sounds, have chickens, grow pumpkins, watermelons, fruit, all the wonderful things that we can do in a rural agricultural area. I can appreciate the efforts put forth by the developer and their team. They have certainly tried, but I think you can gauge from most of us that even though there have been changes made, it still doesn't mean that it's an appropriate use for the space. And I believe that more than just noise, these are people's opinions and perspectives on their homes and things that are of great value to them. I agree that the comp plan probably does need reviewed, but there have been multiple addendums as discussed. But one of the only spots that's listed in Westfield as a priority for maintaining its rural nature is that area. As it's mentioned, that hasn't been changed. And just because it hasn't been updated as a whole document doesn't mean that there aren't valuable parts of that document that still apply to 2022. The property was purchased with full knowledge of its use. Our property was also purchased with full knowledge of its use. There are lots available. They said they could only find 3. I'm certain that over 2 years ago when the property was originally purchased, there were more options available to them as developers. And I'd like you to consider, as you look at this plan, worst case scenario, and many of you have mentioned once it's approved for all the uses that it can be, it is subject to the open market. So I would like you to consider all the uses that were listed on, I think, the document that came out a couple years ago, and what would be the worst thing that we could see there, and that is a possibility if it's approved. Also, I am concerned about the Anthony Road. That road is getting treacherous as well, and although there won't be access to the businesses, it is becoming an increasing problem. The speed is an increasing problem, and people fly down that road. It's not safe for children and animals up by the road currently, and it would only get worse with a development like this. There's no negating that it would make more money as North Point 2. This land would make more money as North Point 2. But in our family, we have made choices, sometimes in our family, that may not have been the most profitable choice for our family, but was the best choice for quality of life for our family. And I would like Westfield to consider the same. Of course, it can make more money, but life is bigger than just money. I'd like you to consider what the best option for Westfield would be and to consider keeping it as it's been zoned. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Martin Kirkwood. I've lived at 21570 Anthony Road for 18 years and enjoyed that peaceful road and thought I was in Brown County driving up and down that. I have a long list of notes that I was going to read from, but truly this is scaring the heck out of me. This could be a decision tonight to profoundly change my future and this community's future, and I ask why. Why is that necessary? I was part of those that tried to fight Aurora, North Point 1. That was not in the original comp plan as a district for that purpose. That was approved and given because it made sense and it fit. It has affected a lot of people negatively, and I'm sure many are disappointed it's in their backyard. But there is no reason, in my opinion, from looking at all that we have available in the city of Westfield to make this hard stop become no longer that hard stop that we are told in Aurora North Point 1 that it would be. So I fear that you're just going to continue to hear about these developments and what they want to do and these amendments, and they're going to keep coming back in front of you like they have with North Point 1, asking for additional land, additional uses, exceptions to those policies you've already set in place. We're going to find out some of those things aren't in writing, so they can do whatever the heck they want, chop down a bunch of trees, and that addition that there was just happened a few months ago. So this is truly scaring me, and I'm using my heart to speak to you. I hope you understand that. This will affect many of us in a way that we do not want, and we can see that there's no need for it in our community. When we talk about the comp plan, that was written in 2007. It says it was a 20-year plan. State law mandates that your entity uses that as your primary source for making your decisions. And there are lots of things I had written down that I could counter the points that he had the 20 minutes to make to you. I don't have the time to do that. You know what your job is, you know what your role is, and you know how that comp plan is intended to be, by state law, strongly considered in the decisions you make moving forward. So I hope and pray that you understand this is not just a simple decision that's going to allow the city to get some more tax dollars, which will turn into abatements and requests for other things that don't come to fruition. So this is not something that I think you know is going to be what it's said to be. It is something that's going to impact lives in our community. The city of Westfield, I moved here for many reasons. One of those is the opportunity to have that rural residential lifestyle. And it says in the comp plan, we want to maintain that diversity and not become another city that has so many hodgepodge things happening and let development and business tell us how we live our lives. So I implore you, please take this seriously. Please understand how much this will impact people, and please do your job and help plan for our city as it should be according to our comp plan. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Des Schillinger. I live at 18507 Idle Wind Court in Westfield. And I want to give you maybe a little bit different perspective on this, because for 17 years I lived in Hinkle Creek Estates. So I would run, bike up and down Anthony, and it is a beautiful piece of property. Absolutely beautiful. And as you all know, we're not making property. We're not like Singapore and just making the country bigger. And this is some beautiful property that, you know, right now looks like it's a flip of a quarter. Is it going to stay beautiful, or are we going to turn it into industrial park? I moved my company from Kokomo, Indiana down to Westfield 5 years ago. I'm in an industrial park. I'm in the Alpha Industrial Park, which must be 30 years old, and it's still not full. So now we want to talk about North Point 1. Nice industrial park, still not full. So why do we want to go build another industrial park, damage the environment, damage these people's lives? Because, you know, we can say, well, we're going to get tax dollars. You will get tax dollars from that if you do it. It's going to take a long time for you to get it. Is it going to take 5 years? Is it going to take 30 years like it is over in the Alpha Business Park? But you're going to lose tax dollars because you're going to damage people's property values. They're not going to be able to move. They're going to have to lower their price to get out. Then they have to go spend more money than they should be for another house. So, I mean, we really need to look at that. I mean, it's the community, it's the people of Westfield that make Westfield what it is. It's not the business that comes in and works 8 to 5, and then they all leave, and do they drive to Noblesville? Do they go to Cicero? Do they go to Tipton to work? I mean, to live? So we don't see those dollars. But it's the people that are here, living here, spending the dollars, are really the people we need to try and help. And when they come out calling for help, offer that to them and nurture it so we can do something to make it all better. So I ask you to please look at that. And I mentioned that I'm in an industrial park, and I'll tell you that Ray's trash trucks comes to at least 3 or 4 of those buildings every day, and you hear it rumbling down the street. You hear trucks backing up because we now have beepers and sensors on them that say, I'm backing up, beep, beep, beep all day long. It's not what these people want to have in their backyard. So I ask you to please think about them before you make the decision and think about keeping portions of Westfield to be beautiful, you've got a tremendous growth going all around. And there's some places where you need it, but there's some places where you really don't. And I think that there's gonna come a time when people are gonna wanna build 2, 3, 5 acre neighborhoods henceforth, like Hinkle Creek and Mill Farms were over in Noblesville, and you can't get into them. They're always all sold out. So I think there's another way for money to come to Westfield. So please vote no. Thank you.
Mike Graper, 21250 Anthony Road. I agree with a lot of the comments that were made. A lot of people that are a lot better spoken than I am had formulated some really great short speeches that I completely agree with. A couple of quick points. One thing that I find interesting is that even though you've made 5 changes to this plan over time, all you've really done is gotten rid of all buffers, if you think about it, and made the buffer for people who can't be in this room tonight to protest having an industrial park next to them because they don't own the lot yet. And I think that's exactly what would happen, because who in their right mind would want a 3-acre lot in the country with an industrial park next to them? Look around you. No one, right? So, but those people aren't here because they don't own it yet. And I think that, that's your job to think about as a committee on, you're representing us as taxpayers also, and not just the developers who are here to try to find a use for every particular piece of land. And like Cliff stated, farmland is productive land. That is part of the plan, and there's nothing wrong with having farmland. That's why we all live where we live, because we want to be around farmland. And if we can't respect what the plan is to make those decisions, then how do we live our lives? How do we go about making decisions? And I've heard the excuse for 3 meetings now, well, the plan's old, it hasn't been updated. Well, whose job is that? Let's update the damn plan. Why are we not updating it? To remove these debates. Well, and it's obviously not going to happen for this meeting, but for future developments, future things, whose job is that? Why is that not on someone's agenda? Update the plan and remove this discussion of, well, it's an old plan, we don't know that it's really the intent anymore, it's changed. I don't understand why we're not updating that. So I would highly encourage this committee, if that's your job or the city's job, whoever's job it is, to undertake getting the plan updated, to make a fresh statement of, is this supposed to be rural residential? Or what's it supposed to be? So we don't have to have these debates all the time. Thank you for your time.
Good evening, Wayne Wheeler, 20889 Anthony Road. When you go towards the end, almost all the points you're going to talk about are taken. It's unfortunate to me that the petitioner thinks 30-plus concerned people in this room are noise. That's unfortunate. Another point they made was, hey, we don't own this land. We don't own this land. Let me refresh your memory. There's a gentleman named Chris White that was on our calls with us that said he was an investor in your group. He bought the land in January of 2020. So I maybe slipped their mind that one of their investors bought the land in 2020 of January. Now let me get to my notes. The city still has not shown any critical need for this land. As been mentioned before, the comp plan has been updated 7 times. If there was a need for more industrial land in Westfield, my guess is someone would update it. Just because it doesn't say this now is needed, it's because the city hasn't said, boy, we've run out of industrial land, we need to update it. So the plan's been updated 7 times, industrial hasn't been added to it. So just because one developer thinks we need more industrial land does not mean we need more industrial land in Westfield. North Point 1, which has been shovel ready for 5 years, has 3 buildings in it that are occupied. That's it, in 5 years. Okay, there's 180 acres still sitting vacant in North Point 1, and that doesn't include the 75 acres that Gordon Food Service owns, because we're going to assume maybe one day they'll build. Of that ground, 120 acres that is vacant is still owned by Mr. Wilkes' company, Holiday Properties. You take that 120 that's still sitting empty by Holiday, add the 13 to it that they've got their empty spec building on, they still control 133 acres of vacant land in North Point 1 that nothing's been done with. Then the other 60 acres have been sold to investors that's sitting there, okay? So I don't want to hear that we're out of land. We're not out of land, Okay, just because it's been sold to an investor doesn't mean something's not gonna be done with it. We still have plenty of industrial land. As the interest rates continue to climb in this country, people are pulling back. 3PLs, warehousing, manufacturing are all pulling back and not investing right now. They're sitting on the sidelines waiting to see what's gonna happen. As evidenced by Gordon Food Service. They bought the land in 2019. That building's not even up yet, okay? And we don't even know if that building's coming or not. And so people are not right now building 100,000 square foot warehouses. With that being said, I look at this proposal and think, in what universe does this make sense? We don't need the ground. We've got plenty of ground to work on. The city doesn't need the tax dollars from this. And so the thing that I find interesting was when everybody gave their submission at the end of the February meeting, 5 council members said, we don't really know if we need this or not. So I ask you that question tonight. Has that been answered? Do we really need this? Thank you.
Hi there. Sorry about the t-shirt. I'm coming right from a baseball practice, so I apologize about that. My name is Brad Canada. I live at 20945 Anthony, just northwest of where this picture's cut off. Like the gentleman said, there's a ton of houses right up Anthony Road. There's a ton of houses right up Hinkle. If you blow this out, there's a lot of farmland. You guys approve this one, you're setting a precedent. You're going to approve that one, 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 and all of a sudden we are well out of luck. I stood here 6 months ago, and I'll say a lot of the same things, but under no circumstances, no adjustments, no revisions, and no enhancements will I support this land variance. I proudly work for a large medtech Fortune 200 company and have been with them for almost 15 years. I'm also a 4th generation Fishers resident. My grandparents met at Fishers High School, had a class of 16, got married. My parents met at Hamilton Southeastern High School and a class of 60, got married. I graduated in a class of 425, and now if you add up Fishers and HSE, it's about a class of 2,000. That being said, I am someone that is absolutely pro-growth in business. I've seen the benefits of community growth, progressive in a way that we need to plan for the future expansion in our community, and I am 100% full understanding of the economics of why this decision makes sense financially, but I still don't agree with it. Here's my rational, unemotional belief and ask from you all. Keep the land zoned for exactly what was planned and approve this land to be. Build whatever is currently approved on every square inch of this land, and you will not see residents pushing back. We're not asking for our community to leave this as is forever in a green space. We are simply and respectfully asking you all to stand firm in prior decisions for this land and do not set a nasty precedent that will continue to make its way north and northeast until somebody has to come in and say no. I know my neighbors have spent a ton of time mapping out all the negative impacts this has on us being in rural Northeast. The majority of this board, the investors and developers presenting today, the council members, and most of our community will never have to make it up to rural Northeast, ever. It's very easy to have an out of sight, out of mind mentality and be thinking dollars only right now. For all of us in this room, it's absolutely devastating. I know that we don't make up a high percent of our residents, but it's destroying 170 acres of rural farmland to put up a concrete fort that will literally devastate our day-to-day lifestyle. The opposite of what myself, my wife, and our 3 kids purchased 6 years ago, dropping just about every penny I had in my net worth and still having the majority of my cash flow just to keep this property up. I will be the first in line to support current and future expansion in industrial and commercial properties where it should be zoned. Develop every square inch of Westfield that is zoned for industrial and commercial today. This is important for taxpayers and it's important for our community. Just don't do it in the rural Northeast where it's not intended to be and was never planned for. I know for a fact there is not a single person in this room, and it's the board, it's the residents, it's the developer, and the investor that would support and love to have this in their backyard. If this was 170 acres right outside of Bridgewater, there is no possible way we'd have a room full of people saying, let's do this thing. We will have hundreds of non-Westfield residents driving by my driveway every single day, and to have 3 kids driving every single day, it worries me, and worries me a lot. This is the opposite end of the spectrum of what this land was zoned for and planned for, so please vote no. Thank you.
Hi, I'm J.R. Emerson. My wife and I have a legal practice in Carmel. We sold our house on Plum Creek Golf Course and bought a farm up here. Wasn't my dream. Wasn't my dream at all. But my wife wanted to have cows and move to a farm. So I upped from walking out my back door to go play 18 holes of golf to walking out my back door and smelling cow crap. We bought the land. We found out there was a lot of flooding. I've shared some photos of you guys with the flooding. We spent $35,000 because nobody will do anything. Everybody says it's terrible, but the city, the county, nobody wants to help with it. $35,000. Still not right. The water doesn't come from their land. The water comes because it naturally flows that way. I've gone back over the GIS maps and looked at it over the history of the land. But I do have concern with the new house that was built, with other construction that's going to be done. What will happen if there is construction here? Because the water is going to have to run somewhere. I'm sure that if this is approved, you're going to make sure that it hooks into the system there at 38 that our land doesn't hook into. But some of the water probably will be displaced, and it probably will come down Anthony, and it will flood. But as you look at this land, it just reminds me that from 2007 until 2016, we lived in Whitestown. I was the judge in Whitestown, and I had a law practice. I practiced in Lebanon a fair amount. And as the judge in Whitestown, I saw a lot of people come before me that had committed crimes at the Amazon warehouse, at other warehouses that were there. Now, they were petty crimes, somebody stealing an iPad or something, but it happened. There's a police run in there. There's this going on. There's that. And when I look at this, I just think of Whitestown. And if that's what you guys want to have, then you can have that. And there's a reason that Zionsville and Whitestown didn't join up together. And it's because Zionsville didn't want that. And if you look at what that is and the development that they put there is fantastic. There's lots of warehouses and factories there. That's terrific. But at Christmas time, when the traffic leaves, the police are out there directing traffic. Police officers get run over. There have legal cases based on that as well. The traffic that's going to come with this, it's going to feed more and more and more, even though we all hope that it won't, the same way that it's crept up the way that it has. They haven't been able to, there's additional land that's available now. It's not like there's land that's not available or buildings, they're all sold out and somebody's dying to put something right there. Again, it wasn't my dream to move to the country, it was my wife's dream. But it is nice to walk outside to see the stars, to know that you've got some room to kind of move your elbows, to have some animals, to hear our animals, the animals down the road. And we just ask that you, as some of the others have said, there's a better use for this. This is probably at the bottom use that anybody would find for this land. And there are other uses that we would find more acceptable. I would ask you to vote no. Thank you.
Good evening. Apologize for being late tonight. Like my friend Brad, I was at soccer practice coaching, so glad I could make it and speak. I spoke here 6 months ago as well. Oh, sorry. Justin Evans. I live at 5376 Sheridan Road. So if you look at that little jut on the far left side, that's my property right there, 3 acres. 2 of my boundaries feed into this proposal that we've been working on for what seems like 10 years. This is impacting people's lives, and I shared this last time. Since then, I have adopted our daughter, Heaven, who's 7 years old. She loves this property. This is our home. This is our little piece of heaven is what we call it. And about 8 o'clock every night, there's this little area of woods that we get to look across, and a pack of deer come out about every night. And I love it. We get our binoculars out. We get to view them. We get to enjoy the property that we've invested our life savings into for our family to enjoy what is approved today to be agricultural and rural residential. And in my eyes, this proposal is the right thing for the wrong area. Black and white. It's not approved for this. When we bought our house, this was never on our mind because it's not in the comp plan. That was a legal binding signed document that we had to go off of when we put our money and our savings into our property. And ever since then, we've had to sit here with these folks and fight and fight and fight. And I love this crowd. I love our neighborhood. I love our people. And I love our community. And we do not want to leave. But we are being forced to continue to come back to the same problem, which is it's the wrong thing for it's the right thing for the wrong area. You're putting it somewhere it's not approved for. It's black and white. So we would appreciate, as a community, as people, as lives, as families, animals, livestock that are in this area, if this is approved, all impacted negatively. Put yourself in our shoes, please. Think about if this was your family, this was your property, this was your backyard this was being put into, against what you knew what it was supposed to be. That's all I ask, because that's how we feel. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Pam, did we get any emails during the meeting? I think you forwarded us one
Yeah,
or two.
we did one early on in the public hearing that Kevin forwarded to you prior to the scan I forwarded.
Okay. Yeah, I got that one. Okay. I am going to close the public hearing then at 8:31. And let the petitioner respond to some of the comments.
I'll start with three, I don't know if they're apologies, but clarifications. I'll start by saying that my dad grew up on a sugar beet farm in rural Nebraska. My uncle owns a ranch in Wyoming that runs 50 to 75 head of cattle. I would never purposefully belittle agricultural history or agricultural as a contributing part of our communities. So I want to start with that to the Hunt family. I want to apologize to Christy Wheeler. I will say that I think that her recollection and mine are different, and that's why I did not reach out to her. I recalled, I will admit, I was somewhat preoccupied. I was 3 weeks away from getting married, so I'll use that as somewhat of my preoccupation. But my recollection was that I was to communicate with her when we were coming back to the Plan Commission. We were required to do additional public notice, so I did not reach out to Christine, and I will apologize to her for not doing so. And this is what I do for a living. I stand here. I generally have a large target on my back, but I would not purposefully belittle public communication as being noise. I think there are misunderstandings. There are things that I don't think are accurate that I think are noise. There is no one on this development team who owns this property. That's a fact. I think that's important. That's important to correct. I don't believe that there are 1,500 to 2,000 acres of property available for this development as we sit today. That fact, that statement is included in almost every piece of remonstrance that I've seen, I've read them all. I'm sure that all of you have as well. I don't believe that to be an accurate statement. That's my job, is to stand up here and point out what we believe are not accurate statements about the petition that's before you. And we think those are important. We think those are important distinctions. Those are important things to bring to attention. I'll have Chris come up in a minute and talk about what demand looks like, what demand is, what needs exist. Are there 3, 4, 6, 8, 10 acre parcels that are available for development? There are. Is that where the market is today? There's some market for it. You heard a gentleman talk about a long-standing business park that still has capacity in it. Could it be because that was the wrong place for that development? It might be. The comp plan talks about where business parks should be. Talks about them having access to transportation opportunities. Here's a proposed development, has 2 proposed access points on a state highway. That is 1 mile from its western boundary from an interchange to a limited access US highway. It's not in the middle of, it's not adjacent to 100, 200, 300 acre or 300 unit developments. It's not. It's not down a rural road. It's not, it is adjacent to a state highway. That we think is important. We think it goes to why the comp plan does have support for this proposed development at this proposed location, because it is a location that we think meets some of those reasons that I talked about before. We have, I will also say, I don't think there's anyone on the development team who feels entitled to a rezoning or entitled to a modification. This is a long process. It has been an extraordinarily long process, the longest I've ever been involved in my 15 and a half years of practicing law. But it is by no means easy. It is by no means something we feel entitled to. Continue to make adjustments that we hope meet and accomplish overcoming some of the barriers that you yourself presented to us 6 months ago. So that by no means do we believe there's an entitlement to this. We believe we have a case to provide to you, just as the remonstrators have an opportunity to stand and tell you why we haven't met their case with that case, or why we shouldn't move forward. There is land available for development. That's not an untruth, but I'll have Chris Wilkes come up and talk about some of the opportunities that have been presented to them as recently as yesterday or over the weekend, of needs that exist or inquiries that are made for a community. If your community doesn't have X available today, ready to go, they go on to the next community. We might never even find out who it is. But you have an opportunity to do that. And that's not, those type of large-scale assemblages are not available in the market as it exists today. There are and will be infrastructure improvements made. We think those could positively impact surrounding neighbors as it relates to runoff from this parcel. It will undoubtedly bring city utilities to this location. It will undoubtedly add to the existing infrastructure in this area of the community. Whether there's no forcing, there's no requirement for adjacent property owners to come on to city services, but it would be available, something that without this development is not and could not be made available. We have worked on buffering. That has been where we started. That's where we've continued to put effort. What we think, from an attractive perspective, from an ability to attract potential users to North Point 2, the park was the best solution, because it becomes a community asset, an asset for those in Westfield, for those who come and locate their business there, people who come and work there. But we heard significant concerns about that when we were here in February. So we went back to the drawing board. That was not an empty action. It was not an empty offer. We thought it was a benefit to both the petitioner, the community, and the neighbors. Others disagreed with us, and so we went back and made modifications. So we have been intentional about requests and attempts to modify this. This is not something where we're kicking the can down the road, and to someone's point of it's 5 people who aren't in this room tonight. That's not the intent. The intent is to find what is an appropriate and acceptable buffer from the existing development, from those existing 7 lots. That's what we have focused our efforts on. And frankly, I mean, to their credit, there's been no negotiation from the remonstrators. We understand they are opposed to this petition. In normal cases, we will have negotiation, we'll have discussion, we'll have an opportunity to say, hey, if we did this, would this overcome your concern? To their credit, they've held fast. There's been no negotiation. So we are taking feedback from the Plan Commission, taking feedback from staff, and attempting to make development better. But there's not that, because their vision and our vision are different, and that's okay. That's why we're here tonight, and that's why you have the job you have of and the council has the job they have of making that final determination. But we believe that this is an appropriate location for a business park, for a modern business park, and we believe it will provide the benefits we've discussed. And with that, I'll ask Chris Wilkes with Holiday Properties to discuss some of the requests that they've had and to close us out this evening.
Do we have time? We have time limits for presentation for petitioners for, I think it's 10 minutes in our rules of procedure. So I will let Mr. Wilkes speak, but please be short.
All right, thank you. Members of the commission, for the record, my name is Chris Wilkes with Holiday Properties, address at 231 South College Avenue in Indianapolis. And in recognition of to be brief, let me just speak. And I said, I think I said this at our last hearing, you know, from day one, the adjacent residences on Anthony Road have been on our mind. And from day one, we have tried to provide a transition that would allow our business park and be respectful of their residences. And I just, and as you can see from the iteration, we have evolved. So that we have, it's not been for lack of trying. And we don't expect that any of those 5 options that we put up from day one were really going to be met with enthusiasm. We just felt it was the right thing nonetheless, okay? And so we continue to chase that a little bit. And as Russell mentioned, I frankly feel like the park, I was surprised that received the most noise, sorry to use a word, comments, negative. And so, because I did think we had an opportunity to create a business park, much needed. I'll get onto that in a second. But we could also add a green space, a park space for the community to benefit. And that park space would benefit the business park as well, and would help attract the type of tenants that we're trying to attract, the tenants that are very selective in the choice of where they reside. So again, the Abbotts, the Bastion Toyotas, those type of tenants, they are, someone mentioned, they are very interested in park amenities, not to mention just the physical park in which they locate, but the park, the city as a whole. And every one of those, I mentioned this in our last meeting, every tenant that's been out there at North Point has been a competitive chase. That is Westfield against some other community here in Hamilton County or even regionally. So that's the kind of tenant and we're pursuing, and that's important because in today's business environment, companies really are, they can have their pick. They really don't want to put up with the time that it takes to entitle a site like this. So, availability, that's been talked about a lot. It's all right. We have about 120 acres right now in North Point 1. But let me tell you, those 120 acres are made up of about a 55-acre parcel, a 20-acre parcel, a 31-acre parcel, and a 12-acre parcel. And I can show you on the map where those are. But all of those parcels are contained for one reason or another, a road or a park boundary. So it's not like we have 120 acres sitting there contiguous, okay? Now, just today, there was an RFP responded to for a 50-acre user that's requesting information on Westfield in our park. We don't know who it is. It was submitted through the city. Just this past weekend, I received a notice from a commercial real estate broker asking if we could assemble 100 acres for an advanced manufacturing user. I told him, we don't have 100 acres. We have 120 total, but not contiguous. So, that's what we're kind of talking about with North Point 2. And you have seen, some of you I'm sure, have seen a number of announcements in the central Indiana area for major economic projects and investments in communities that had available land, a supportive community, and they were able to respond. So, you know, we could pick any of those projects that have made the news recently and ask them, why didn't they come to North Point 2? It's not available. It's not zoned. Did we miss an opportunity? We don't know. We'll never know. But that's really what we're talking about here. You know, planning for the future to accept opportunity when it presents itself. Because when it does present itself, it doesn't present itself for long. So you just need to I'm sure you are, but I would ask you to be very sensitive to that. There's been a lot of talk about the 2007 comp plan. I just want to say, I think the 2007 comp plan, we're not arguing that the comp plan is wrong. We're not even arguing that it needs to be updated. We're not. We're just pointing to the text of the comp plan that supports this use. I would tell you, as a developer of holiday properties, we would not be looking to develop a business park anywhere, Westfield or otherwise, without adjacent, good transportation that State Road 38 and US 31 provides. We have a park down by the Indianapolis airport called the Ameriplex. It happens to sit right by I-70 and 465. The text of the comp plan got it right, in my view. So I think this is a wonderful place for a business park. I understand that the Anthony Road people are not in support of this. I get that. And we have tried to be supportive and sensitive in providing transitional buffering. And we will continue to do that. If this isn't the right plan, then we're open to other thoughts. We've gone from buffering, we've gone to mounding, we've gone from a public park to now 5 acre, or we're trying. But I do think the comp plan got it right. And because I would ask you then, if it's not the business park here, then what is it? What should it be? And then lastly, we've done a lot of things up in Westfield, and I've been here on a number of occasions. And I think as a company, Holiday is all about integrity. And I have to correct the record when it's wrong. And Chris White is a partner with us. He also is a Westfield-based developer, as you know. And just for the record, Chris White never purchased this ground in January of 21. He doesn't own it now. None of us own it. We have this ground under option. So I just want to correct the record, because I thought that was offered in a little bit of a disparaging way. So I just really want to make that point. That maybe not have been very brief, I'm sorry. But I think from there, I'll just close my commentary. And again, I appreciate everyone's time and attention here. Thank you.
Thank you. Plan Commission members. I will start with the second down this time. Dave Schmitz, please. Any comments or thoughts?
Sure. First off, I want to thank the petitioner for the refinements that they've made over time, their continuing efforts to improve the plan. Also want to thank the members of the public who spent their personal time here tonight, spent time writing us emails and speaking. I can assure you that those of us up here have spent time reading what you've communicated to us and listening to you tonight. So thank you to both groups for your efforts. With this site, I have a hard time not being frustrated every time we have a hearing, just because years ago we had the opportunity and effort was made to put a public park in this location. And that effort was torpedoed, and that process kind of ran aground, did not have the effort to torpedo it, had support from the surrounding area, not necessarily the people here, but I think it's just unfortunate that that could have rendered this whole evening moot, and perhaps a lot would have had to have happened for that to be a park. But that effort was made. And so it's frustrating to me that, you know, kind of at the other end of the spectrum from how you would characterize a commercial or industrial park, we had the opportunity for that, and that didn't work out. The comp plan arguments, I think there were some persuasive arguments made tonight by some members of the public and the petitioner. So in my view, you know, the comp plan may not necessarily prohibit a commercial or industrial development, at least on some of this land. But there's certainly a lot of sensitivity here that there wouldn't be in some locations. And any development that would be in this location, I'd like to see the uses ratcheted down in terms of the intensity for light, noise, height, scale, so that in this location, perhaps those could be compatible. And as you've mentioned, the buffering is key, and you've made a lot of efforts. But I think the problem that I have with this is that you know, the people who would want to locate there want ready-made zoning and want to have something that they know is compatible with what they would develop, yet we're being asked to zone it prior to knowing what those facts are, and that's concerning to myself and probably my colleagues because of the sensitivity of the site. So it's kind of a circular thing. I was hoping for maybe some greater creativity with the transitions than what this most recent version has. Because again, that transition to Anthony Road is key. And if I had any brilliant observations or ideas, I would have presented them. I don't know what the answers were. I guess I was just hoping for something that would be creative in terms of the park design to be compatible and maybe give some comfort to this board and perhaps even the neighbors on what would ultimately be there. But that's the issue I'm still struggling with, is that we've got a sensitive site. I like an enclosed industrial product on a busy state, well, you can debate busy, but on a state highway close to a U.S. highway freeway. I mean, that, to me, that makes sense if you have the right kind of users. And that's what I'm struggling with right now.
Cindy?
This is hard because I don't want to be too verbose tonight. It's been late. I will say thank you to Russell. You've always represented your people well in the projects that you do, and I often don't agree with some of the things, but you do your job well. And our petitioner is a valued member of the development community here, so thank you. I mean, it's not, and you know where I'm going with this because you know I think that I will not be supporting this project. I haven't from the get-go. At council introduction, I told you, no, there's zero chance that I would approve this. And that remains the fact today, whether there's a few residential home sites as a buffer or not. This is an industrial use north of 38, and I don't believe that our comp plan warrants that. Variety of reasons. I'm going to let others talk. Thanks.
Mr. Deck?
It was great seeing the public process working so beautifully this evening, and I appreciate everyone's civil presentation. We are definitely taking this very seriously, and just the number of times it's been up here and hearing comments and what have you, definitely get the sense that I think you're all going to be very happy. I can't see how this is going to pass. With that being said, also, unfortunately, Fortunately, there is a lot going on in Westfield right now, but unfortunately, the pipeline for commercial projects in Westfield is not nearly as robust as it once was. So if this project goes ahead and does not happen, what have you, well then what's next with regards to a project of this size that would benefit all the Westfield taxpayers as a whole? I don't know. I think that's a much broader and larger question for us to consider outside of this public hearing. I'd love to see somehow, some way, we get back to where that pipeline is full again. With regards to the location debate over, there's a variety of other locations this could go. Where it is in proximity to State Road 38 and 31, there aren't many other locations that beneficial for a project like that. And with regards to the space just sitting empty, warehousing space is absolutely golden in central Indiana. It's in high demand. So if you got it, it's going to get filled up. But again, that being said, it seems like the public or the sentiment of this commission and apparently some on the city council, this isn't going to happen. So this is just me, I guess, making comments for the public record.
Thank you.
I'll try not to be repetitive as well, because, I mean, all the words that I've been thinking during tonight's presentations and public hearing, Mr. Schmitz and Mr. Deck, I mean, you said them much better than I would have. And I agree wholeheartedly with everything that you guys have said. And starting off the bat, Mr. Schmitz, I agree. I'm just frustrated. I am beyond frustrated that we had the opportunity for this to be a wonderful green space, to be a park, and it was shot down. And now we are between a rock and a hard place of, is it going to be industrial, mixed use? What is the buffer going to be? You know, all these options that now we've gone through the process of the fifth rendering, I'm sorry, that we've seen tonight. And it just boils down to frustration, because me personally, I don't want to see another huge residential development in Westfield. And I feel that the park was shut down, commercial, if it is shot down, well then commercial shot down. The only thing left, besides it remaining the same, remaining as is, which again, I grew up as a country boy. I would love for it to be that way, but the property owners have the right to sell who they may choose, and then, you know, it's out of our hands. The last option is residential, and all of our problems currently is surrounding around overdevelopment. So just trying to wrap my head around this, it's just very, very frustrating. One other point that was made earlier, I will also say, yes, there is a lot of permitted uses in this area, and I would like to see that dwindle down as well, because we are so much in the zone of unknowing, I would like to have a little bit of knowing, you know, have some expectation of okay, if there is a need for a 100-acre lot for one commercial use, corporation business, what have you, you know, I just want something to know, something to ride on here. But I do also agree, and I know I said I was going to be brief, and here I am rambling, but with the State Road, or with 38, again, I agree with the comp plan that this would be a good zone for light industrial use, or how will you, due to now access with US 31. Yeah, I just said I was rambling, so here I go. I just got to cut myself off, because I'm an emotional individual. that's what I've become over the past several years in just listening to neighbors, building relationships, and I feel for you. I really honestly do, because I've been in your position of not wanting certain things to happen. I mean, growing up, I was against a lot of things that happened in Westfield, and now I'm here on the Planning Commission approving certain things and whatnot. Because I've seen both sides of the story. And in this role, we have a responsibility to the entirety of the Westfield, Washington Township to provide opportunity that might benefit everyone. So again, I'm just frustrated. My heart hurts for you. And I don't know what my decision will be in the future. I'll try to gather all the facts that I can to build and make the best possible decision. And that is if this is, even has support amongst committee here and in council. Sounds like maybe not, but only time will tell, so I'll shut up.
Kristen Berkman, please.
I was hoping when we talked about this last time that you all would get together as far as the neighborhood and the petitioner to try to talk about this particular parcel. I first off want to thank everybody that's put so much time and energy into this, because we have two important things in here tonight, and both are important for our community. One is commercial development to help our tax base. The other is caring and concerned citizens that have a right to a lifestyle that's supported within our city. That lifestyle is not supported in some of our neighbors as they've built out, and it's important in our community because people do value a rural lifestyle. I was hoping we could have these two things somewhat merge in this project, but unfortunately for me, the uses are still very, very broad. And the heights of the buildings, the light pollution, the traffic pollution would all impact these people negatively. And part of what we need to do is preserve people's lives, their quality of life in our community. So I just don't see this plan accomplishing that for these people in the Northeast. I do see some possibilities for this parcel, and I think it would be important, and what I would say to all of you that have put so much energy and time and sleepless nights, quite frankly, I know that you've had that, because it's a worry when it's in your backyard, and I understand that. What I would say to all of you is take the energy that you've had for this particular proposal and get together and think about what would be acceptable on that land, because it's for sale. And that's just how this is going to end up going, is it's for sale. And it doesn't mean that you can put anything there. It doesn't mean that people will get a rezone. But to creatively think about this land that's on a state highway and how that could come together in some way in some uses that you would find okay in that area. And there's a lot of uses outlined in the comp plan for your area. And I think proactively coming together with some ideas would be a really great thing for your neighborhood to do. I certainly appreciate everything that the petitioner does for our community and the way of bringing the commercial business that they have to North Point 1. It's important. It's important we have commercial in the right spots. And so I don't want to be discouraging to you two tonight. I want to encourage you to find good places in our community to keep doing what you're doing. This one, for me, is not going to be the right place tonight with the proposal we're looking at. I will also just say, I think I've already said the uses are too broad for me. The traffic. I know we had a gentleman talk about the roads and Anthony Road already having a light, and how would the traffic work at this parcel and how close together. And I know Public Works would also have input into that, but I think it's something to think about on this particular parcel. I think that's all I've got tonight on this one. I guess one last concern I would say is with the lots. I understand what you were trying to do there, and it is, I think, about 10 acres buffering over. I'm concerned about who would buy those and if they would sell, and then in the future, would someone come back and you'd need to do something else with those. And so that buffer for those people, would that really still be there? Are those really, is it a sellable idea to have those large acre lots next to the industrial? It's just another point that I'd like us all to think about. I know your hearts were definitely in the right place for that, so I appreciate the effort on it. I'd just like to play that one out a little bit on if that would really be saleable next to the industrial uses that you've outlined. Thank you.
Mr. Johns.
I'm going to try to be really brief tonight. We've had a lot of comments so far. So first of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Brown and Mr. Wilkes for their presentation, for coming, for all their efforts. You are definitely one of the finest developers of commercial properties that I know of. And unfortunately this evening, I'm going to have to agree with the gentleman who said it's the right project, but in the wrong place. And I know it would be very nice to have North Point 2 right across from North Point 1. I just don't think that's possible. Hopefully there will be a North Point 2 within Westfield. Definitely would like to see that. But I think Westfield needs to be a community for all people. We say that we are. Part of that is having a comp plan that's recognized the need for a rural subdivision area, and for folks that want that type of lifestyle. And it's up until now, Route 38 has kind of been that hard stop where that rural northeast started. And at this point in time, I think until there's something changed in the comp plan, I'm going to have to stick with the plan as written. So, thank you.
Thank you. I pretty much agree with everything that's been said tonight. I appreciate the petitioners' efforts, and I certainly appreciate the neighbors going through this long process that never seemed to end. I was on 3 committees for the comp plan. The third one was the most recent one. And the purpose of preserving some areas was not just lot size, but lifestyle, because we did want to provide for all kinds of people, whether they wanted to live in apartments or downtown in high-rises or out in the country. There were several areas sort of set aside for that in the comp plan. This was one of them. I agree that lots of things have changed. Businesses change in the way, they operate. We don't have the big office parks on 31 like in Carmel, which is what we thought we'd end up with. That's changing. And it would be good, we had talked about it about a year ago, to try to do some kind of a study in the comp plan in general on what commercial areas we have to try to direct people to them. I am also concerned with the use list. It includes EI uses and general business uses, local business. It can include restaurants, or maybe not, except the uses of restaurant. Okay, so, but it can include retail. And the minimum lot size in this development is 3 acres. So you're talking about 20 and 30 acre parcels, but in this development it currently could be as small as 3 acres, which is maybe not what you intend, but it certainly could happen if you don't develop it and somebody else does. And I don't see retail being appropriate up here. So I will cut it short too and just say I think it's the wrong place at this time without certainly further refinement. We do have enclosed industrial wording in our in our comp plan that talks about in those places that it might be appropriate, we need to write an ordinance that talks about having the less intense uses and the lower heights on the outside and the more intense and higher heights on the, internal. So as a way to buffer. I also agree with Ms. Berkman. I can't imagine anybody buying one of these 5-acre lots next to an industrial park that could be 45 or 60 feet high. So I can't support this at this time either. Thank you. Any other discussion? Is anyone ready to make a motion, one way or the other?
Can I recommend a motion to deny this petition?
You can.
Send a negative recommendation, I should say.
To send a negative recommendation to the council. Is made by Ms. Spoljaric. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Seconded by Mr. Johns. Pam, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Johns?
Yes.
Dr. Kelleher?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
No.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Ms. Spoljaric?
Yes.
Ms. Berkman?
Yes.
Mr. Deck?
No.
Okay, motion carries to send a negative recommendation to the council.
Thank you. I think we're done with our agenda, and we need to go to commission comments. If anyone has any things they'd like to bring up?
If I may on that, I think, I know this was the 5th time, but I think we were a little, again, we rushed that vote. Because I don't want to give up on trying to meet in the middle. I don't want to give up. And that just told me that we gave up. I want to listen to both sides. I know we've constantly done that. But by us just voting no on that and then going to council will probably be voted no, it's just that we are giving up to the development community and we are giving up to our residents saying that, no, we're just not going to do anything. We're not going to give the best possible answer to both parties. Yes, are there flaws with the current development as it stands? Are there things I want to see change? Yes, absolutely, but let's continue to work those out. By just saying no, no, no to things, that doesn't move Westfield forward. It just doesn't. And again, I've lived here all my life. I haven't wanted to see things change, but the way we are now, we are vastly different than we were before. And I want to see Westfield moving forward in a positive direction. That's just all I have to say about that.
And I would say there's no reason this can't be brought back at a future time when they've had a chance to work with neighbors and see if there's something. Our recommendation goes to the council, but I don't know what they will say, and certainly it doesn't mean that some variation can't be a reboot, if you would. Anybody else? Comments, Plan Commission members?
I do want to respond to Victor, and I totally get what you're saying. There's also the idea that these folks out in the audience, as well as this Plan Commission, have been talking about and had this on our agenda for now years, I believe it is. I mean, at least it seems it, in so many different renditions, and we also owe it to our community to make a decision on this. And it's not our job to create a project for a developer. I mean, we're supposed to be yay or nay, and I realize that we do a lot of hand-holding and try and get projects through when we can, when they're beneficial. But this has been going on for a long time now, and there needs to be some resolution for the community. These neighbors that are out here again tonight, they keep working at it, and they're drained. I'm drained. And that's why I really just wanted to see this come for a vote tonight. I just wanted to say.
And just to that, I agree. I'm drained. Everyone's drained. You know, I've been drained in many a meetings. But like I just said, just because I'm drained, that doesn't mean I'm going to give up.
Anyone else have any comments?
I just want to add one more quick perspective as a follow-up, that these folks have been checking our agenda for the last however long, 2 years, year and a half, every 2 weeks, wondering if that's the week that they need to pull together their remonstrance. And it's a real stress on the community. So I just want to, you know, these gentlemen, it's part of their business. They get paid, and they're trying to do good things too. But these people don't get paid. They sit and worry about an agenda every 2 weeks. And so for that, I think we've got to move forward in some way tonight to be fair to the community.
Kristen, I think you're up next on the downtown update.
Okay, just to give an update, and we have a lot of people in the audience tonight, we're working on the streetscape along for the whole downtown area. So it's basically everything but the buildings. So it's all the different items that go along the street, the benches, the lighting, the landscaping. And so State Road 32, as many of you have heard, is getting widened. And so as part of that project, we are working on designing the streetscape, which will be beautiful, and adding in a lot of different safety features. So just to give you some background on what's happening with that project, we have hired a landscape architect, which is MKSK. They're a local firm in Indianapolis. And so they'll be helping the team that's assembled to outline how everything will look along that State Road 32 corridor. And I think that's pretty much the update tonight, but it's exciting to have a partner, and we're going to start speccing out the different elements along there. Does anybody have any questions on that tonight? We are going to regather with the council and the APC probably late September, early October, to give everybody an update again at the round table format. We'll public notice it just so everybody gets an opportunity to take another look at it.
Thanks, Kristen. City Council Liaison?
I will do that report. Council met August 8th. Interesting, we had Scott Fadness, the Fishers mayor. He presented information about the Central Indiana Regional Development Authority, and they're kind of seeking us to consider joining them and other Central Indiana communities to apply for certain state funds, join in on projects that are considered more for a regional basis. There's kind of a lot that goes along with it, but council has made no decision. There hasn't been a formal kind of request, but he was hoping we'd sign on, so that was nice. Marla Ehler presented some information from the clerk treasurer's office regarding the DWA leases for the property. The city is working with them, with the DWA, to restructure agreements for the properties they manage. That agreement was originally in 2011, so currently working on that. Jeremy Lawler presented the midterm budget review. Council discussed Resolution 1422, which people might not remember, but the city loaned Grand Park $6 million in 2014, and council is seeking repayment and drafting those terms, working on that with the Redevelopment Commission. We approved the Midtown at Westfield PUD amendment that was here. Also approved the 2019-2020 GO bonds that were appropriated, and it was for the original project, so it wasn't anything new. This was just what we needed to do to appropriate the money from before. And then also another additional appropriation request was approved for the library project. Lantern Commons PUD amendment. That's coming before us September 6th, and that'll be for changing the PUD for lifetime fitness use. And then also introduced and coming for hearing September 6th, the Austrian Pine PUD amendment. and the UDO amendment concerning floodplain overlay district. And that's so we comply with the new state regulations. An ordinance increasing the, yuck, I hate this, stormwater utility rate that was introduced, and we'll have a hearing August 22nd. Anytime you talk about utility rate increases, it's never fun. So that's coming, and we approved the form of the ARPA agreements for the nonprofit organizations, so they will soon be able to get their funds. That's it.
Thank you, Cindy. BZA, are you doing that, or is Dave?
I got it. BZA did meet last week and approved 3 standards variances. One was a pool location variance, a minor setback issue that was approved. There was a property on Montrose Lane, which is it's a pre-1977 subdivision near off Spring Mill Road, just north of 161st. And since it's an area of non-conforming lots, it's zoned AGSF1, but they're all smaller than that. So they needed a couple of variances in order basically to accommodate a detached garage that the homeowner wanted to build, and those were granted. And the final one was for temporary outdoor storage and a few other items for a self-storage facility in the middle of North Point. And those were granted. And that was it.
Thank you. Community development.
I keep off and on. Nothing tonight. So all that.
You have to have the last word.
Yeah.
Nothing.
No,
Okay, thank you.
Nothing tonight. Thank you.
We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Boljaric, seconded by Ms. Berkman to adjourn.
Mr. Johns?
Yes.
Dr. Kelleher?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Ms. Boljaric?
Yes.
Ms. Berkman?
Yes.
Mr. Deck?
Yes.
You're adjourned.